Well, good morning, everyone. Happy St. George's Day to you all. I'm Brad Power, Director of Programs with Municipalities Newfoundland and Labrador. Thanks for joining us this morning. I know it is a municipal holiday, but we really appreciate you coming out to this great presentation. Thanks to our friends at Stewart McKelvey who joined us this morning, partner Joe Thorne and associate Sarah Byrne. This webinar is brought to you by M&L Advantage, your M&L Membership Services Program. The format for today is as follows. Joe and Sarah will deliver a presentation for approximately 20 to 30 minutes, and then we'll hold a Q&A at the end. Feel free to use the chat function of your Zoom app to pose your questions, or you can also email them to bpower@municipalnl.ca, or you can text me at 709-763-4686. The webinar and presentation will be made available online after this session. If you'd like to pass it along to others, feel free to share the registration link, and those individuals can sign up and watch it on demand. So without any further ado, I will hand things over to Joe Thorne with Stewart McKelvey. Joe, over to you, sir.
Great. Thanks very much, Brad. Good morning, everybody. As Brad mentioned, my name is Joe Thorne, and I am a partner with Stewart McKelvey in St. John's. My co-presenter today is Sarah Byrne, an associate in our St. John's office. Our presentation this morning will deal with some of the physical and logistical challenges of carrying on municipal business while we're all practicing social and physical distancing. We're going to cover some topics, specific topics including town council meetings and home inspections, and some more general issues about doing town business in general by distance. Now, as Brad said, we're happy to take questions as we go, or we can deal with them afterwards. To get us started, I am going to share my screen and get this presentation up, and then I will turn things over to Sarah Byrne. Sarah?
Good morning, everyone. And as Brad said, thank you for joining us. I am going to be discussing the first topic, municipal meetings. Joe, if I could get to the next slide. Perfect. All right. So in the days of COVID-19, public council meeting and chambers are not just ill-advised, they break current public health guidelines. So the Department of Municipal Affairs issued a circular to municipalities in late March, hoping to provide some clarity amidst these unprecedented times. And there are a couple of key things that municipalities need to be aware of. The first and not perhaps most important of which is the requirement that publicly accessible meetings of council must be held at least once per month, which I'm sure most or all of you are aware of. Even though opening a town hall or town chambers to the public for such a meeting is not allowed, there has been no current legislative changes to date to delay the requirement of a monthly meeting of council. So the circular provided in March encouraged towns to not meet and only meet if necessary, and to continue to support social and physical distancing guidelines. However, based on the legislative requirements in the Municipalities Act, municipalities have to find a way to keep moving forward while maintaining social and physical distancing. The Municipalities Act does allow for councillors to participate in council meetings by electronic means, as long as they can hear what's happening around them and can participate in the meetings themselves. This means that meetings can be properly constituted with councillors attending remotely. And Joe, I'll get you to go to the next slide. So hosting public council meetings remotely have two key components that you must consider. One is ensuring that the councillors themselves can participate, and the second is ensuring that the public can participate. To date, however, there is no single best practice or established means to have these types of virtual meetings. There are a lot of platforms, there are a lot of tools and procedures that can be used. And while we're not here to dictate how you should have these meetings, we would like to give you some ideas from other jurisdictions on how to ensure that you meet your legislative requirements to the greatest extent possible, even during these times of COVID-19. Many municipalities nationwide have been finding creative ways to ensure that their requirement to hold public meetings are being met. We've done some research into other jurisdictions and other municipalities to see how they're conducting their meetings. I'm going to highlight a couple and then provide some basic ideas and summaries of the types of things to be looking at. So the City of Kingston are streaming meetings live via YouTube and encouraging residents who wish to comment on any of a list of predetermined agenda items to submit written questions or comments, I suppose, and are providing an opportunity for individuals to actually participate in the meetings by Zoom or by telephone. The City of Melfort is not streaming council meetings live, but are allowing certain groups of individuals who ask to attend, as well as the media, the opportunity to observe council meetings and ask questions live. The meetings are then recorded and posted to the city website for public viewing after the fact. Fort McMurray, on the other hand, they're streaming meetings via Teleforum, which is another third-party system that kind of works like Zoom that allows viewers to watch online and submit questions. Further, individuals who wish to participate by phone can do so and are put into a queue with a moderator who will say when they get to ask their question. The City of St. Albert is streaming council meetings live via Zoom and then via YouTube as well. Members of the public who want to address council are encouraged to send an email to a designated address, which identifies the certain agenda item that they want to speak to, and all requests have to be submitted by the morning of the meeting. So if you look at all of these things in the grand scheme, each municipality seems to be doing things differently. There's no, like I said, there's no one best way to do this, but each is essentially opening up ways for people to participate online, by phone, and then some sort of participation mechanism, whether it be live questions or submitting them in advance. So we understand that not all municipalities are able to, have a moderator that has control over who asks the questions and when. So taking into consideration all of the physical constraints, resource constraints, and human resource constraints, we encourage you to look at the different options that are available to you, the different resources. And the options are plentiful, and we understand that. And what works best for one municipality might not work for another. So when you're choosing what is best for your municipality, please remember that councillors must be able to hear what's happening around them and must be able to be heard by their fellow councillors. So we do recommend that if you're having these meetings virtually, that you do a sort of dry run to give everybody the option to work out some of the technical difficulties that may happen, and of course are likely to happen. Recommend looking at the different technologies that may exist. For instance, I'm using headphones in order to cut down on background noise. Some people have computers that do noise canceling. So look at the technology that you have, the types of things that are available, and then proceed on that basis. The other thing to keep in mind, of course, is that since the public can't actually physically attend the meetings, that you should do all that you can to ensure that the greatest number of people possible are able to attend. And given that there are individuals who may not have internet access or may not have access to Facebook or YouTube or these types of things, to achieve the goal of ensuring that as many people as possible are able to attend, this may mean that online streaming should not be the only way forward. And having some sort of phone-in option might be important to ensure access to the greatest number of people possible. In a couple of the municipalities that I had highlighted earlier, in some, people are encouraged to, ask live questions. In other situations, people are asked to provide questions and comments in advance. Depending on the comfort level of your councillors and perhaps the engagement that you're expected to get, advanced or live may work for you, whatever works best. So like I said, when you're creating a plan, make sure that your councillors can hear what's going on and can participate themselves, and whatever level of comfort you have with the public being able to attend, just make sure that there is a way for people to attend and join as we go. Back to you, Joe.
Great, thanks, Sarah. So the next topic that we're going to cover is conducting and continuing municipal business during COVID-19. So in general, there is a statute in Newfoundland and Labrador that assists with some of the kind of official business of many municipalities, many businesses. The Electronic Commerce Act provides the ability to dispense with in-person or other physical means of conducting business for a number of areas. In many cases, or in most cases, anything you would need to send in writing or receive in writing can be sent electronically. Now that would include for municipalities, standard correspondence, tax assessments, receipts for payments, or other forms of information or notice provided to residents. And that can also include, electronic communications can replace written communications where, and this has two requirements, where the recipient can receive it and it is capable of being retained by the recipient. So I've spread these over 2 slides, but in any case, generally speaking, the requirement is it can be received by the person and it can be retained by the person. Now, most of us, and sometimes I think a little bit narrowly about myself and about our firm, have email systems, have document retention systems, and so on. Practically speaking, this may limit the ability to use email and other electronic communications with certain of your residents, particularly those who are maybe technologically limited or are of limited resources, or in some cases, elderly residents who don't use email or don't have email set up. But for those rest of us who have email and use it regularly, and particularly businesses, the Electronic Commerce Act can dispense with a lot of the requirement to be in the office writing letters, or basically to be in person for dealing with people with respect to some of these topics. Also note that the Electronic Commerce Act allows payments to be made to the town and by the town electronically, as opposed to in person by cash or check and so on. Again, of course, this would require the town to be set up for those kind of things, but Interac e-transfers and other electronic payments can be accepted and can dispense with any other statutory requirements for payment that don't specifically prohibit electronic payments. And I'm not aware of any provision in the Municipalities Act that prohibits electronic communications or payment. And so the Electronic Commerce Act provides a way for you to deal with that while you're at home. When it comes to signing documents and receiving signed documents, contracts, letters, anything like that, the Electronic Commerce Act also allows for electronic signatures. Now, an electronic signature means a form of signature a person has created or adopted in order to sign a document, and that is attached to, or associated with the document. Now, there are more popular forms of documents, electronic signature platforms, including DocuSign. Now, DocuSign is a fairly sophisticated form as compared to some other forms of electronic signatures. It requires a license to use, enables you to coordinate multiple signatures across multiple documents with tracking, with notices to people when somebody is signed, and with dating and other kind of metadata attached to it. Some municipalities may have access to that. I'm going to assume that most do not. If you don't have a DocuSign license, or the matter is more simple, an electronic signature can be as simple as a PDF of your signature or the signature of the person who needs to sign a document, like a mayor or a councilor or a town clerk. Basically, in order to create a PDF electronic signature, all you need is a white piece of paper, the ability to scan, and the ability to PDF. I personally did that for the first time when we moved our offices to remote work, and got my electronic signature set up so that I could continue signing letters and doing the same things I'm describing to you now. I would be happy to provide anyone on this webinar with some simple instructions for creating an electronic signature afterwards. I'm not going to walk you through it now, but I'm happy to circulate that as part of the materials for the presentation. Now, it's important to remember or to know as a municipality or an employee of a municipality that the Electronic Commerce Act says that municipalities must consent in advance to receive electronic communications from someone as a public body. Municipalities do not generally need consent to send electronic communication. So while the municipality is capable of sending out emails with letters and tax assessments and so on, you need to get, or the municipalities need consent of the persons, or need to consent to a person sending them something electronically. And while that's at the discretion of the municipality, we would recommend that, given the constraints that people are experiencing these days, and Canada Post disruptions and so on from time to time, that this is a reasonable way for a municipality to proceed while we're under physical and social distancing. So with respect to affidavits, sworn documents, statutory declarations, those type of matters, this is an issue that we as lawyers have been dealing with quite a bit in the last several weeks, given that as part of our litigation department, there's any number of affidavits to be sworn, any number of other documents to be notarized, and so on. Now, whether or not this is a large part of your municipal practice, certainly there are affidavits necessary for litigation matters, tax matters, elections, and so on. There is no specific prohibition in Newfoundland and Labrador against what we call remote commissioning. There's no specific requirement that you have to be physically in front of somebody who's swearing an affidavit or otherwise having some sort of document sworn. The rules of court don't prohibit it. Our Commissioners for Oath Act merely says it has to be sworn before the person. And we've received no direction from the courts or from the province that the province won't accept, or the courts won't accept, a remotely sworn document. The courts have relaxed their requirements and will accept both remotely sworn documents as well as unsworn ones in urgent matters. So we've developed a bit of a working guide for swearing documents remotely. And if I can impress upon anybody who's planning to commission a document or otherwise take sworn evidence, detail is key. If the sworn document is ever challenged for any reason, you want to have a strong written record available to you. Our best practices thus far say that you should try to coordinate with the affiant and or commissioner where possible to discuss logistics. So when we say that, of course, we mean what platform are you going to use? It's going to be Zoom, Skype, LoopUp, some other sort of video conferencing platform. If you're going to need the documents sent to the person who's swearing them and is commissioning them, so that they're all looking at the exact same document at the exact same time. How are you going to get the originals back to one another? Those kind of things. The affidavit itself, or the document with the sworn evidence itself, should list where the commissioner and the affiant are physically located and the medium over which the affidavit is being commissioned. It's also helpful to address the situation and why the affidavit has to be sworn in this manner in the body of the affidavit. So, for example, there might be a paragraph at the end of the affidavit or whatever sworn evidence to say, this is being sworn remotely because of social and physical distancing regulations associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. In terms of actually physically doing it, the best practices that we've been following thus far as a law firm are to conduct it over video conference. Ideally, telephone is not ideal, but not impossible either. Review the document together over video conference, so make sure that you're looking at the same version, no changes to it, that all the material in it is the same. Have the affiant sign the document over video conference, and then have it returned to you as commissioner, or vice versa if you're the affiant to the commissioner, in original by mail or otherwise, so that the commissioner can then commission the document that was signed by the affiant in original, and commissioner then signs the original. And as I say, document everything, because if it comes down to a challenge as to what was in the affidavit, how it was signed, how it was commissioned, you're going to want to have that information if you have to swear an affidavit to support the affidavit, for example. And so at this point, I will turn it back over to Sarah to discuss remote home inspections.
Perfect. Thanks, Joe. So this topic is on continuing municipal services, particularly using remote building inspections as a case study. However, I know that most or all municipalities necessarily don't do building inspections, and it's not something that everyone does. For that reason, I've kind of built in themes that relate to, all continuing services. So even if you don't do building inspections, sorry, please stick along, stay here with us, and I'll see if I can give tidbits for everybody as we go through. So generally speaking, as I said, some municipalities have opted to carry out their own building inspections. And when municipalities choose to do so, they are held to a high standard of care and must be exceedingly careful how they conduct themselves when doing so. Municipalities show that they are acting as a prudent inspector would, and they may even be under a greater standard of care when the work that's being inspected is integral to the structure of the home and where the defects could cause serious harm. While municipalities aren't required to offer building inspection services, those that do may take on a greater risk, particularly in light of the current pandemic circumstances. So if municipalities do conduct building inspections and wish to find remote means to do so during the pandemic, then they have to have a clear policy that will be important as a go-forward basis. Joe, I'll get you to flip to the next slide. Perfect. So when municipalities make actual policy decisions as opposed to operational decisions, they cannot be held liable for those policies and those decisions. This means that setting out a formal policy may offer some protection against liability claims in relation to those policies. So this means that if municipalities want to react or want to continue offering a form of service during the pandemic, then they should consider acting and creating a genuine policy relating to whatever service that they want to offer remotely. This should include how the service will be offered, and then the policy has to be documented, has to be publicized, and has to be followed to the letter. So the adoption of any policy can be made at whatever level would normally do so, whether it's a town manager level or the council level, and should be made public on the municipality website or through other public notification channels. By outlining specifically how inspections are to be completed, it may offer some degree of protection if latent defects aren't picked up during a virtual or remote inspection. So further, it should be noted that a policy not to act in light of the current situation is still a policy decision and should be treated as such. So if you're not going to offer remote building inspections, say so, create it as a policy, and protect yourself that way. So regardless of the decision to act or not to act, protecting yourself and your municipality is, of course, important. If your municipality does conduct inspections, then the forms and all of the permits should provide language stating that the inspection is to be or was conducted virtually by the municipality in accordance with the instated policy. And if the inspector has any concerns, any questions, or anything that they're worried about as the inspection is happening, then it should be documented. It should be noted on whatever forms or whatever reports or permits that are provided. As I've said kind of throughout this presentation, there's no single best way to act. There's no one best policy and no one best way to protect your municipality from liability in a situation such as this. However, as I promised, there is a theme to this, and that is the enactment of policies. Whatever your town is doing to continue operations, continue services during the COVID-19 pandemic, we encourage you to create policies. whatever you're going to do, make sure that it's written as a policy, it's enacted as such, it's publicized, and then it's followed. By doing so, you create at least some sort of protection around yourself for whatever decisions you're choosing to make during the pandemic. This will allow people to not only see how the decision-making process is made, but also understand themselves what types of actions the municipalities are making at this time. And really what that does is act as an insulator somewhat for any liability that may come down the pipe. At least people become aware of the things that the municipalities are doing. And while it may not provide full liability protection, at least people become aware and are given the opportunity to engage if they have issues. So as with everything, options should be reviewed. And if you have any concerns with respect to creating your policies to ensure that you're meeting your obligations to your townspeople or under the Municipalities Act, then please reach out. We are here to help, whether it's any of the topics that exist here today, or as we've encouraged you, please ask questions. We're more than happy to help. And that's really the main thing when it comes down to this is document what you're doing, make sure that you act on what's being documented. And if you have any questions, please reach out. We are here to help.
Great.
Excellent. Thank you both. We really appreciate your presentation. Some really excellent topics there this morning. Folks, for everyone's benefit, we will open the floor to any questions that you may have for Joe and Sarah right now. Feel free to type them into the chat function. While we're waiting to see if any questions come in, I'll just remind everyone, similar to what Sarah just did, by all means, reach out to Stewart McKelvey at any time. We do have a referral program in place with them here at MNL, and the first 15 minutes of advice is free. Stewart McKelvey has been a long-standing partner of ours, so we're very grateful for their time today. One quick question came in from Trippy Parsons. Trippy asks, do you have any templates for policies, those that you referenced here on the webinar?
So, go ahead, Joe. Classic answer. So depending on the types of things that you're looking for, realistically, we don't have any template policies. It would have to depend on the topic, what you're trying to do to protect yourself, and what sort of thing you're trying to protect. If it is building inspections, that is a topic that we have looked at in the past. So if it's something that, if that is the policy that you're looking at, please feel free to reach out. We can try and create something based on the work that we have done in the past. That would suit your municipality. Like I said, there is no one answer. So depending on what you're trying to achieve, then it would really have to be personalized, but it's not something that is uncommon. So please do reach out.
Excellent.
Yep.
Thank you, Sarah. I don't see any other questions coming in. So folks, I'll just remind you, you're more than welcome to follow up after the fact. Feel free to reach out to Stewart McKelvey directly, or you can reach out to me at bpower@municipalnl.ca. Thank you again for being here today, Joe and Sarah. We really appreciate your time. Everyone on the line, we would appreciate if you filled out the webinar satisfaction survey that we posted in the chat function. We will also send that out via email. It's really important that you give us some insights on what you thought of today's session and the format. Obviously, MNL Advantage will be offering many others moving forward, so we want to get your opinion on those. Be sure to register for our next webinar. We have one on next Tuesday at 11 o'clock, I believe, with Cal LeGros, COVID and Your Community, 5 Best Practices for Managing Risk. So I encourage you to register for that one. Thank you again for joining us on behalf of MNL. Thank you, and have a great St. George's Day holiday. Take care, everyone. See you.
Thanks, everybody.